Was Jared Cannonier forced to fight Michael Venom Page in his next fight? That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. My name is James Lynch, so credit to Crazy Kev for grabbing this clip from the Red Hawk recap. Tim Welch and Joe Riggs talking about Jared Cannonier's next fight. Some interesting comments here. Let's listen to this first, and then I'll give you my take on everything else.
I was going to say something.
I think they announced Jared's fight.
Did they?
Did they announce Jared? I had seen online that he was fighting MVP.
Yeah.
That's the rumor, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. And from
MVP, dude.
They kind of, Jared wasn't too excited about it or something. And they just said that Dana put out something and said Jared to be on the chopping block or something like that.
Oh, no way.
He said, did you hear about that?
Oh.
Anyways, it's a small clip, but it does give us a glimpse into how the UFC does their business. And a couple key things here. First off, there's Jakar Close with Joe Riggs and Tim Welch. So they're all discussing, I guess, a bunch of different stuff on the Red Hawk recap. But the Cannonier fight comes up. And if you missed it, by the way, I did a whole video on the Jared Cannonier-Michael Venom Page matchup because it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Like, MVP's had one fight at middleweight. He is ranked 15, but he's fighting Jared Cannonier, who just came off this huge win over Gregory Rodriguez. Now, look, I know there's going to be people watching this video going, hey, Jared Cannonier's 40, he's on the tail end of his career. Like, I get all that. And I also get that he's been, lost fights to Kayao and Nasruddin Imavov. The optics don't look great. Those are the two losses prior to him beating Gregory Rodriguez. But just interesting that UFC's like, look, you got to fight MVP or we're going to cut you. Like, I got a problem with that. We're talking about a fighter, Jared Cannonier, who's been with the promotion for, I think, close to a decade. He's fought at heavyweight, fought at light heavyweight, fought at middleweight. He's fought the who's who. I mean, let's go look at this resume right now. And this is how you're going to treat someone on the tail end of their career. Now, I will say that, like, at least Jared's not fighting like some no-name guy. I mean, that's sort of the silver lining here. At least he's fighting MVP, who's got a bit of a name himself. But yeah, Cannonier, 41 years old. But you look at the resume of who he's been in there with, Kayao, Imavov, Vittori Strickland, Adesanya, Brunson, Gastelum, Whitaker. I mean, the list goes on. He's fought everyone. Even at light heavyweight, he fought Jan Blachowicz and Dominic Reyes, Glover Teixeira. So, this is a guy that has been a very serviceable fighter for the UFC. And it's always a tough spot when you're at the end of your career, or tail end of your career, I should say, and you're losing key fights. Like Cannonier lost to, Imavov and Kayao, and it certainly looks like they wanted Gregory Rodriguez to beat him, but that didn't go according to plan. Cannonier ends up winning that fight. So they give him Venom Page. I think where Jared probably was like, hold on a second, why do I have to fight this guy? Because he just beat a pretty notable opponent here, Gregory Rodriguez, and he's fighting someone that's much lower in the rankings here. Actually, MVP's not even ranked. What am I talking about? I thought he was 15. That's what they had on the poster they had yesterday for UFC Europe when they announced the fight. Abus, the Abus is actually 15th right now. So he's fighting an unranked guy. So Cannonier is currently ranked number 7, and he's fighting an unranked guy. I know that's not unheard of, and I do realize that a lot of these other guys are booked up. Right, like you got Dolidze fighting Hernandez, Vittori's fighting Allen, DeRitter's fighting Whitaker. You got Costa booked against Kopylov. You got Abus. So process of elimination here kind of isn't in his favor. I understand that. You could have done the Cannonier Strickland rematch. That could have made some sense, right? Cannonier's coming off a win, Strickland off a loss. You could have done that. Although it kind of seems like if I had to guess, the UFC probably wants to do Strickland and Adesanya, that rematch next. So I guess what I'm trying to explain here is that I understand Cannonier being like, why am I fighting him? He's got one middleweight fight, and it was against a guy in Shara Bullet who's not even close to the rankings. So, like, why should I have to fight him? And then it's just, the part that annoys me is that the UFC is strong-arming Cannonier to take this fight, and they're like, you better take this or we're going to cut you. And Cannonier's, well, like, it's probably like, well, I don't have any other options. I got to take this fight. So it sucks to see the UFC treat fighters like this the way they are. And again, I know it's a business. And I understand, like, that, he could have fought someone even less notable than MVP, and that would have, probably, it would have been a lot worse. At least MVP's got some name value here, and it's not like MVP's young himself. He is, he's 38, so not that far behind, Jared Cannonier. It's just the fact that they threatened to cut him I don't like. Like, that's not how you treat veterans of the sport on the way out. And this goes to a bigger thing that I've talked about on my live streams, and something that maybe I'll do a video on here, because I still get fans commenting on how the UFC's better than ever and things are great, and the cards are awesome, and I wouldn't be doing anything else on a Saturday night. And my argument has always been the quality of what it means to be in the UFC goes down. And this ties into this Cannonier stuff, because here's the thing. If the UFC had it their way, they would probably cut a guy like Cannonier. They would bring in like 4 Contender Series winners to make up for what Cannonier would be, and the sausage factory would continue. Like, one of the things we've noticed over the last couple of years with the Contender Series is that they cut a lot of like notable fighters, good fighters too, just to make way for the Contender Series guys. And I think Cannonier is kind of in that category where he's not fighting for a title. He's not a contender anymore. And this is their way of being like, well, look, you got to take these fights, otherwise we're going to get rid of you. This happened to Jairzinho Rozenstruik, right? Same sort of thing. You look at heavyweight right now; it's never been worse in terms of the rankings, right? Like you got Teixeira at like number what is he at, like number 15? He's number 14. He's got what, like a fight or two in the UFC, and he's 14. Meanwhile, Jairzinho Rozenstruik gets cut, and he would beat most of these guys that are at the tail end. Taito Avasa too. Like he's a guy that I would, you get rid of Jairzinho Rozenstruik, but you keep a guy like Taito Avasa. Doesn't make any sense to me. So again, this is just another example of the UFC being really kind of not treating their veterans very well, and I don't like seeing that. And Jared's a great guy, entertaining fighter. Yeah, he's had the odd fight that wasn't that super entertaining, because I know there'll be people in the comments being like, "What about the Osagna fight?" Yeah, that wasn't great, but you know what? I thoroughly enjoyed him beating up Marvin Vettori. I thought the fight with Imavov was entertaining. Same with the Kayao fight. Those were good fights, and these are two top guys in the weight class. So it's not like Cannonier's at the point where it's like every fight he goes into, he's like a liability of getting finished. That's not the case at all. In fact, I think he's probably going to beat Michael Venom Page in this fight coming up here, right? I talked about that yesterday in the video. You look at his losses, they're some of the best guys in the division, plus he has a win over Strickland. You know what I mean? So I just think treating a guy that is still capable of winning good fights in the division, it's not the way they should be treating fighters like this. So hearing this was just really disappointing, but it also doesn't surprise me either, because the UFC has just been like this for a while, where they're just ready to get rid of, good veteran fighters at the flip of a dime, just to bring in the next wave of Contender Series fighters, which, by the way, a lot of them come in, the Contender Series guys, and they're not ready, right? Like they signed too many Contender Series fighters and they're not ready, and they end up getting cut like after 2 or 3 fights. We've seen this over and over again. So yeah, not a fan of this stuff. I think it's a bad look for the UFC, but also understand the other side of it as well, that Cannonier's on the tail end of his career. I'm just wondering if there's like a happy medium here. Can they not give Cannonier some fights where, they're at least make a little bit more sense? I don't know. I feel like there should be somewhere meeting in the middle a little bit for a guy like Cannonier who's fought the who's who. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Am I the angry old man in the lawn right now with this video? What do you guys think? Or do you think I have a point? Like, I just feel like a guy like Cannonier should be treated a little bit better here. You shouldn't threaten him you shouldn't threaten to cut him for not taking a fight. There's plenty of fighters that turn down fights all the time. I think in this case with Jared, like his reasoning is probably like, look, I'm fighting a guy who's not even ranked. So that's kind of my argument here. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.